At 3:15 a.m. in Kursk, something happened that was no accident. A surgical operation that turned $1,500 into a $1.7 billion nightmare. Tactical genius or dangerous escalation? You decide. Subscribe if you believe it was a legitimate display of military ingenuity. And also if you think this opens the door to a war without rules. Hit like if the technology amazes you, comment if the destruction outrages you. In minutes, we'll see the hidden route, the electronic warfare, the impacts, and how a small swarm changed the logistical map of an entire region. Leave your opinion below and get ready for the full analysis. At 3:15 a.m. on October 14, 2025 in Russia's Kursk region, the Marines of the 810th Brigade slept peacefully. Their base, valued at $1.7 billion, was considered an untouchable fortress. Armored, shielded, and covered by the sophisticated Panzer S-1 air defense system. But that dawn, 5 small Ukrainian FPV drones, worth barely $1,500 in total, were about to turn that fortress into a historic inferno. The attack wasn't improvised. For weeks, Ukrainian intelligence had identified a radar blind spot barely 1.5 meters wide at the rear of the base. That tiny gap, invisible to Russian sensors, would be the perfect corridor. 3 drones would glide low, skimming the pine trees at less than 3 meters above the ground, while 2 others acted as decoys to distract the defenses. The Panzer S-1, pride of Russia's air defense, was built to shoot down jets and missiles at high altitude, not tiny drones flying at ground level. On their operator screens, the radar showed calm skies. They believed everything was under control. But the night was hiding something far more dangerous. The drones advanced in formation. Their AI flight controllers made thousands of micro-adjustments per second, keeping course through the fog. The Earth's curvature and the forest terrain blocked radar detection, while humidity reduced the efficiency of thermal sensors. Everything was going perfectly, until a Russian soldier heard a high-pitched hum. The man fired into the darkness. Tracer rounds tore through the fog, waking the entire base. That gunfire triggered the Kursk 4, an electronic warfare unit capable of jamming communications over 200 kilometers away. Within seconds, the Ukrainian operator's screen turned to static. Signal lost. The drones were flying blind. In theory, the mission was over. But the Ukrainians had planned for this. When interference was detected, the 3 drones automatically switched to autonomous mode, guided by preloaded Starlink coordinates and internal gyroscopes. They no longer needed a human pilot. A swarm without eyes but with its own brain kept advancing toward the enemy's heart. Meanwhile, the last decoy drone released 3,600-degree flares to overwhelm Russian thermal sensors. The Kursk was flooded with false signals, while the Panzer tried to make sense of corrupted data. Its cannons rotated slowly, with a 2.5-second delay, chasing ghosts that didn't exist. It was like watching a giant swing in at shadows. The real drones, exploiting the confusion, moved just 2 meters above the ground. The Panzer opened fire, creating a wall of tungsten and lead. But all it did was expose its own position. 1 decoy drone was destroyed, but it had done its job, clearing the path for the 3 attackers. The base was now fully awake. Over the radio, a voice screamed, "Drones inbound!" But it was already too late. Comment 1 if you think Ukraine did the right thing by destroying a $1.7 billion Russian base and proving that intelligence can trump firepower. Comment 2 if you think Russia became overconfident and paid the price for underestimating Ukrainian technology. Comment 3 if you think Putin was humiliated by an attack that exposed the shortcomings of his own military. Now let's continue. Russian Marines rushed out of the barracks carrying Igla launchers. One managed to lock onto a drone's engine heat, but at the exact moment of launch, the drone released liquid nitrogen, cooling its body to 100 degrees. The missile lost it in the fog, a brilliant move, but costly. The battery was draining fast. The clock was ticking. Less than 8 minutes of power remained. Russian operators focused all jamming power into one narrow frequency, pouring the Kursk's full force into the control channel. The Ukrainian operator's screen shook violently. But the drones weren't tied to one signal. They jumped between 500 channels per second, moving like digital shadows impossible to pin down. The Russian system, unable to maintain a stable lock, began to fail. Desperate, the Panzer gunner switched to manual control. In a final attempt, he fired blindly into the fog. Each burst sent thousands of bullets per minute into the air, but visibility was near zero. To make matters worse, a Russian battery fired a chaff shell, releasing a cloud of metallic strips meant to blind radar. The result was catastrophic. Both sides were blind. The Russians couldn't see their own base, and the drones couldn't see their target. With cameras nearly useless and battery power fading, the Ukrainian operator disabled auto-targeting and flew by instinct, guided only by inertial sensors. The drones dived low, skimming the ground beneath the metallic haze. In seconds, they broke through the curtain. Ahead lay the target, a massive ammunition bunker, an RPG storage depot, and a hidden bay of Grad rocket launchers. 15 seconds to impact. The first drone hit the main bunker. Its shaped charge warhead used the Monroe effect, turning a copper cone into a jet of molten metal, traveling at over 2,400 meters per second. The 15mm steel door melted like paper. For a split second, silence. Then came the shockwave. 500 shells ignited simultaneously. The second drone hit the weapons depot, causing a secondary explosion that sent blazing fragments in every direction. The third struck the Grad launchers, vaporizing them in a blinding white flash. From above, drone cameras captured the shockwave, expanding like a rippling ring of energy, flattening everything within 200 meters. The fireball reached over 2,700 degrees Celsius. In seconds, the entire complex collapsed. Flames reached several stories high, and a pillar of black smoke climbed thousands of meters, visible from 30 kilometers away. The chain reaction destroyed 5,000 tons of ammunition, enough to supply 2 active fronts for a month. The pride of the 810th Brigade was now a smoking crater. The strategic fallout was immediate. With no fuel, no weapons, and no communications, the brigade was out of action. Russian high command was forced to pull 10 brigades, nearly 50,000 troops, from other fronts to fill the defensive gap. Ukraine hadn't just destroyed a target, it had shifted the logistics balance of an entire region. Cost: $1,500. Damage: $1.7 billion. A mission proving that a handful of garage-built drones can outperform decades of military investment. What was a tragedy for Russia became a message from Ukraine. We can make your border bleed whenever we choose. That night, the skies over Kursk witnessed the new face of modern warfare. Silent, intelligent, cheap, and deadly. It's no longer about who has the most tanks or missiles, but who understands technology better. Because with creativity, strategy, and a few circuits, even a swarm can dismantle the heart of a superpower. The lesson is clear: never underestimate ingenuity over money. Ukraine proved once again that you don't need the biggest arsenal, only the smartest plan. And so it ended. 3 $500 drones reducing a $1.7 billion fortress to ashes. What was meant to be untouchable became a trap built by its own arrogance. Kursk burns, and with it, the illusion that military power is measured in size or budget. Today proved that a nation can lose billions to a handful of young operators, a few chips, and a Starlink signal. The question now isn't who won this strike, it's what it means for the future. Are we witnessing the end of traditional warfare, or the birth of an era where any workshop can build a strategic weapon? Comment what you think, a defensive act or a reckless provocation. Subscribe if you believe ingenuity defeated wealth, or if you think this is only the beginning of something far darker. Because this story doesn't end here. The next battle is already on the horizon.